Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today for Don't Get Ripped Off When Publishing. I'm so pleased that you're spending part of your day with us at BookLogix to learn a little bit more about publishing and how to protect yourself as an author. My name is Angela, and I'll be taking you through the session today. If you have any questions at all during this session, please feel free to send those to me. You can use the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So there should be a section of the control panel that you'll see on your screen for questions. You can type those in there for me. I will keep an eye out for questions during the session. We will also have some time at the end for questions as well. So if you're new to BookLogix and joining us for the first time, we are a non-traditional book publisher and printer in Alpharetta, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. We work with folks from all different backgrounds to help them put their book together. We can take them through the entire process or just parts of the process. Everything that we offer is a la carte, so as an author, you can pick and choose what assistance you need to get your book done, printed, sold, marketed. And again, everything's a la carte. So we try to be really flexible, make it easy for you as an author to kind of figure out what you need for your process, because every author's book and project and process is going to be different. Now, I want to make sure to stress that the goal today is not to bash anybody. It's not to say anybody's bad or not to use them. I don't, if I use an example, I don't say who or anything like that. The point of this session is really just to create awareness and educate you as an author. Things to be aware of, things you should know, things that we have seen here at BookLogix for authors, and what can you do? What do you look for? What questions to ask? So I'm going to give you some examples of things that we have heard directly from authors over the years. BookLogix has been around since 2009. So, the longer that we are around, unfortunately, the more things that we hear that have happened to authors from other providers. So here's some examples. One author told us how they were charged thousands of dollars for editing and then had to have the book re-edited. Another person had a situation where they said, I don't own the rights to my book's files, so I have to have the book redesigned. Another person came to us and said, well, wait, I'm traditionally published, but I paid them $11,000. Another author, my contract says I have to give them my next manuscript too, but I don't want to. Another person came to us and said, they promised me all this fancy marketing and I never saw any of it. And in another situation, we had an author, actually lots of authors that came to us and said they shut down, meaning another supplier that they used, and now I don't have the files for my book and it's not even on Amazon anymore. So that person was just completely feeling lost and really didn't know what to do after the supplier that they used had shut down. I'll tell you this, most authors are so worried about the manuscript being copied or stolen, they're really not in tune or kind of paying attention to other potential issues that may happen. Where I, over the last, however many years it's been, I started working for BookLogix, doing work in 2010. So over those last 13 years, where I've seen authors kind of get scammed or ripped off has nothing to do with the copyright of their manuscript or their manuscript being stolen. It's kind of everything else that can happen. So I certainly understand the fear and wanting to make sure that your manuscript is safe, that it's protected, but don't let that kind of distract you from the other ways that you may actually run into issues. Because like I said, most everything I've seen had nothing to do with anybody trying to steal somebody's manuscript. So let's talk about now when you are going to select a provider, what are some things that you should look out for? Now, certainly if you are pursuing traditional publishing, some of these things may not apply. Really, this is a lot more of what I'm going to talk about today is for the non-traditional realm, self-publishing or some kind of assisted or partner publishing of some kind. It's important to really identify what kind of publisher are they really? And I gave an example a minute ago of somebody that said, well, I was traditionally published. But then they told us they spent $11,000 and paid that company $11,000. So are they a traditional publisher? Are they not? Are they a service provider? Like, what are they and what do they do? And, what will they do for you? If they're telling you one thing, but the signs are pointing to another, that may be something to watch out for. If they're telling you they're a traditional publisher, but they're expecting you to pay money, they're not a traditional publisher. Traditional publishers don't have the author pay money to them. Now, they may expect the author to spend some money doing some of their own stuff, like traveling to their own book signings or things like that, but they're not going to have you cut them a check. How much do they know about the industry? This is something that we are seeing become more and more of a problem because of all the technology, because of self-publishing, because of how easy it is to get a book out there, get a book printed, get it listed for sale online. A lot of folks are starting their own publishing companies, or saying they're a publisher. And so it's something to watch out for of how much do they really know about the industry? How much do they know about the publishing process and all the phases that a book goes through? Do they really kind of know the bigger picture of what needs to happen with a book, what will happen, what needs to be done? Maybe they are very well versed in a certain area. Maybe they were a book designer or they were a book editor or something. So they know one part of the process. But if they are saying they're a publisher, and you don't feel comfortable with their knowledge of the industry, that certainly is something to kind of look out for. Are they willing to connect you with some other authors to speak to? Every author has things that are more or less important to them in terms of researching providers. So maybe this one isn't so much of a big deal for you. Maybe you're like, it's okay if I can't talk to another author that has worked with them. I'll just look at their reviews on the Better Business Bureau website. Or maybe that is something that is really, really important to you. Hey, I really want to be able to talk to an author that has worked with you, supplier. Can you connect me with somebody, or can somebody get in touch with me or whatever? Now, certainly it's a little bit challenging. I can tell you that I can't just provide contact information for clients of BookLogix, but certainly I have some clients of BookLogix, for example, that are willing to talk to people. If there is a new author and wants to talk to somebody about what it's like to work with BookLogix, I have some authors that are willing to do that. But again, it depends on if you feel that's important to you. Are the testimonials on their site from real people? If the testimonials are on the supplier's website itself, are they? I hate to say it, but you never know. Those could be fake. We don't know unless you can verify. So search for those people online. Are those real people? See if you can try to tell. Do they have a book on Amazon that's listed as being published by that supplier that you're researching? That's one thing that you can do. I think when it comes to looking for testimonials or reviews, certainly looking at Better Business Bureau, Google, that kind of thing is going to help. Now, unfortunately, there are people out there that can put fake stuff on those sites too. So, that's not the only way I would research a supplier. You've got to connect with the supplier, interact with them, see what your gut is telling you. But testimonials, I think, can be helpful. Will they be able to respond to you in a timely manner? Now, some of this depends on you, on how much of a hurry you're in. But how quickly are they getting back to you when you're trying to interact with them? Does that feel right? Does it feel good? Is that kind of the response that you're looking for? Certainly understand that, there may be, not a hurry in some parts of the process. Like some parts of the publishing process take a long time to work on. And sometimes as an author, especially if it's your first book, you may not realize like, oh, wow, editing takes longer than I realized, or this or that. But still gauge your gut. Like, how are things feeling? Talk to the supplier. How quickly do you need things? Can they get it done in the time frame that you need? Who will you work with? Those kinds of things. Will they have dedicated staff working with you on your book, or do they have a call center and you're kind of getting a different person every time you call? Again, this depends on what you feel comfortable with. Maybe you don't mind a call center. Maybe you're not looking to have a dedicated rep, that you're working with or whatever. Every supplier functions in a different way. Again, it's about what's important to you. I will tell you, some of these companies that are out there, they do have call centers, and they do have folks that when you talk to them, maybe don't know publishing itself. You know, they're certainly helpful. They have customer service experience, but if you're really looking to talk to somebody about specific questions related to publishing, you know, that person that picks up the phone may not be the right person for you to talk to. Are they pursuing you aggressively when they haven't even read your manuscript? This one to me is a really big red flag. I certainly have authors that come to us when they're kind of shopping around for companies to work with, and they're just like, oh, hey, you know, I've got to get back to this company XYZ right away. Like, they're really coming after me and telling me they want to sign me. And then when I ask them, okay, well, that's great. Have they seen your manuscript? They say no. Well, why are they pursuing you so hard when they haven't even seen your manuscript to know if it's good? That to me just, again, it doesn't mean the supplier is bad, but it does lead to me kind of questioning. So I think that's something important. If they haven't even seen your book to know how good it is or how bad, why are they coming at you so hard and fast? Why are they trying to push you to sign, sign, sign? You know, does it feel like they're really like falling all over you and telling you you're going to be a bestseller? Look, nobody can guarantee that a book will be a bestseller. You know, it's just, we never know. Traditional publishers have flops all the time. They spend all kinds of money and resources and effort into putting a book out there that they think is going to do great, and it doesn't. So nobody really can guarantee that. And if they're just only telling you the good things, you know, are you getting any realistic or kind of constructive feedback or criticism? No one's manuscript is perfect when it goes to a publisher. So I think that's something, again, doesn't mean the supplier is bad, but it's just things that I look out for, things that I question. So we have a question I want to pause for. They say, do we need to get a professional editor before seeking a publisher? Excellent question. My recommendation is yes, because typically if you want to pitch to a traditional publisher, you're actually pitching to an agent first and trying to get an agent to take you on as a client. And the agent is who is going to kind of be that middleman or go-between between you and the publishers that the agent is pitching to. Agents don't have patience for mistakes in a manuscript. So they want to review the manuscript to see if your book and you as an author are somebody they want to take on, and do they want to take the time and energy to pitch your book to publishers. They're not going to want to see mistakes. Some agents say if they see one mistake, okay, two mistakes, the manuscript goes in the trash. So I do recommend that you have your manuscript professionally edited before going to a publisher or an agent. Now, keep in mind, if you sign the rights to your manuscript over to a traditional publisher, they are going to edit it, even if you had it edited. And they may change things, and they may have some slightly different vision of how the book should be. You know, if you're signing over the publication rights, you're putting that in their hands, and that's of course something that, you know, you would work out with them. But yeah, you know, I do recommend it personally. Great question. Don't be shy. If you have any questions, feel free to use that questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel, and I'll keep an eye out for those. So agents, if you are trying to find an agent because you know that ultimately you would like to be traditionally published, here are some things to look out for. So one thing is, what other authors have they repped? Now, it is hard to get traditional publishers to sign book projects. So, you know, don't expect to see these lists of like tons of best-selling authors on one agent's list of clients. You know, again, nobody can guarantee a best-selling book. So the agent may land a great deal for an author, but the book may not become a bestseller. So you have to kind of just use your judgment. What percentage of their clients got a book deal? Again, there's no guarantees. They may be a great agent with great connections, but for whatever various reasons, the publishers didn't pick up some of the books that they were pitching. What were the publishers and their clients signed with? So, so like if you're looking at, if you are specifically hoping to get signed with certain publishers that you feel are a really good fit for your book, is this agent a person that has a connection to any of those publishers? Again, no guarantees, but if this agent has experience pitching to a specific publisher and that specific publisher is on your wish list, maybe that's an agent you want to try to work with. Now, they're going to be the one to decide if they want to take you on as a client or not, but I think certainly that is something to take a look at. How does their fee structure work? Are they expecting any payment up front or not? Or do they only collect payment if they land you a deal? Different providers are going to work in different ways. Certainly, they've got to earn a living at the end of the day, so they may want some kind of a fee up front for doing some of the work of pitching the book. And do they actually work for a publisher or publishing provider? I've seen this more and more over the years where folks are referring to themselves as agents, but it turns out they actually are employed by just one specific publishing company. To me, and this is my opinion, that's not a true agent, because they're basically just trying to sign you with their employer, their one publisher that they work for. A true agent isn't employed by a publisher. They are pitching to a variety of publishers trying to land an author a deal. So it doesn't mean they're bad. You know, different folks do things in different ways, but if you are wanting to be pitched to multiple publishers, you may not want to work with an agent that is employed by only one specific publisher. All right, we're going to move on into cover design. So now what we're going to do, we're going to move into a couple of specific areas where I've seen authors run into some issues. And so we're going to talk about some things to look out for, things for you to know. You know, when it comes to design, whether that's cover design, illustration, you know, you've heard the saying, you get what you pay for. I do feel that that is true in most cases, but not all. Now, I've seen amazing work that came through a freelancer on Fiverr that had really super reasonable prices because maybe they are overseas. And when you do the currency conversion, you know, it works out that in US dollars, you're like, wow, I am getting an amazing deal. This is really cheap. It's kind of too good to be true. In some cases, it is too good to be true, and in others, it's not. Again, I've seen awesome work come from freelancers where the rates were really low. But you know, I've also seen authors spend tons of money and weren't really happy with what they got. But if you're looking for a high quality, you know, cover or high quality illustration, really you want to look at the background of the person. What kind of work have they done? Do they understand the book industry? Have they done book covers before? Do they understand what makes for a professional marketable cover? Because that's key. Some people would argue your cover is even more important than the content of your book itself to try to sell the book. So it's really important that when you have somebody as your cover designer, that they understand the industry and they know what's going to make for a good book cover. I really strongly advise against doing your cover yourself. I guess my one exception would be if you yourself are a cover designer. I do think it's worth spending a little bit of money on a good cover. You know, it is expensive to do a book the right way. It's not cheap. There's fees for editing and design, and if you need illustration, there's fees for that, and printing and ebook conversion and all these things, and filing copyright and marketing and It can get expensive, but I think you have to look at all those things as a long-term investment in trying to put together a good product. And ultimately, if you have a good product, it increases your chance of success in selling that product, which hopefully then means you make back your money eventually. Now with editing, so one really critical thing that I advise authors when they're looking around for an editor is to ask the editor what style guide the editor uses or what style guide they know. Now, there are a variety of style guides. And you may recognize some of these that I've got on screen. Chicago Manual of Style in the publishing industry is what we follow. That's our guide in publishing. Now, there are some exceptions sometimes depending on certain things like who the target audience of the book may be. You can see in the bottom corner the AP style book, Associated Press style book. My background originally was in broadcasting and journalism. I was a TV news producer. When I worked in TV news, we followed AP style. It's a different style than Chicago style. So I had to learn Chicago when I made the transition into the book publishing world. But if I today, working in publishing, decided to do a book for my former colleagues in the TV news world, I would do the book in AP style because that's what they're expecting. That's what they're comfortable with. So we do have exceptions sometimes. But to me, what's a red flag is if you ask an editor about their style guide and they either can't say at all which guide they use, or they're saying one that doesn't seem like it's a good fit for based on what type of book you're going to do. One thing you certainly can ask an editor to do, and they may say no, but you certainly doesn't hurt to ask, is can you get an editorial sample? Have them do a sample edit of a few pages of your manuscript so that you can see what will they actually do. We've done that at BookLogix, especially too if it helps sometimes with a new project if we're not sure what level of editing it needs, because there are different levels of editing. We may do a sample edit of a little bit of the manuscript to be able to make an educated recommendation to the author of what level of editing their book is going to need. Now, we love our English teachers. We love anybody that works with the English language a lot, but that doesn't mean that they can properly edit a book. They may know grammar, they may know spelling, punctuation, although Chicago has a whole lot of rules that are kind of different than maybe what an English teacher might be used to. But it doesn't mean that they are a book editor. So a book editor understands some of the bigger picture of the publishing industry. They understand where things should go in a book or not go, the order of the sections of your book, the process that editing needs to go through, things like that. So I think that's important to kind of take a look at. Certainly have as many people as possible read your manuscript. The more eyes on it, the better. And folks may find some great things for you to fix, some errors and things like that. But I do always recommend a professional book editor whenever possible. Ebook conversion is another one where I've seen authors kind of run into issues with. There's a lot of kind of lack of understandings, with ebook files and ebook conversion and what is an ebook. I think because it's still, in terms of the publishing world, it is still pretty new. So are you really getting an ebook itself, or are you just getting an electronic version of your book? There is a difference. I have unfortunately seen authors work with suppliers that said, oh yeah, I'm going to do an ebook for you, and charge them a fee, and then gave them a PDF. Well, a PDF is electronic, and yes, it may be of your book, but that's not a true ebook file. Are they giving you an EPUB, maybe even a MOBI? Is it a standard ebook or a fixed ebook? There's all kinds of things. And do they give you the files? There's a lot of suppliers online that you can upload your manuscript or the layout file for your book, and it'll kind of auto convert and create ebook files for you and list your ebook for sale. But does it give you the files? A lot of those sites will charge you a fee and put the ebook up for sale, but they don't actually give you the ebook files themselves. So you can't get those files and take them and work with another supplier, sell them someplace else, things like that. So I think that's important, is try to understand what are you getting in terms of an ebook. Will you have the files when the person's done in case you want to do anything on your own with them? I'm going to pause for a question. It says, should we hire multiple editors at the same time? Well, you don't want to have multiple editors at the same time. Only one person at a time should do a round of editing. We call it rounds here at BookLogix. Other folks may use different terms. So basically, we do a whole first round of editing, give the manuscript back to the author so the author can see the changes, but also respond to any questions or feedback or advice that the editor has given in the manuscript. Then the author sends it back to us. We do a second round. I do think having more than one set of eyes is really important. See what their service includes. Our service at BookLogix includes a second editor doing a proofread behind. After the first couple rounds of editing are done between you and the primary editor, we have a second editor go behind and do a proofread, and that is included in our fee for our service. Other editors function differently. I know I've interacted with some freelance editors that they will do some of the primary rounds of editing, but then they will recommend that the author hire a separate editor to do kind of a final proofread or a final copy edit on the whole manuscript, just to make sure it's clean. Because we're all human, we all make mistakes. Sometimes the closer you are to a manuscript, the more likely you are especially you as the author, you may not catch some of your own errors. So in general, I think the more eyes, the better, but don't have people in the manuscript at the same time. You want one person to fully work on it, then you go through it, then you pass it to another person to work on. Because you don't want to end up with different variations of the manuscript and then you're overwhelmed and saying, well, this version has these changes and this version has those changes, and what do I do? And we've had that happen. Also, once you pass your manuscript to an editor, please don't make any more changes in it. You got to stop and wait until the editor sends you back their edited version. Then you can go through and make more changes. Again, it's a version control, I call it. You don't want to end up with different versions and trying to figure out how do you combine them so that all the corrections are in one. Okay, great questions. Don't be shy. If you have any more, let me know. Marketing is a big one where I have seen folks complain over the years. It's hard. You know, I literally talked to one of our authors this morning who is paying a PR person a good bit of money, but that type of stuff can be expensive. And they're just kind of feeling like they're not getting the result that they hope for. Not that there's anything bad, but it can be expensive. But I will say this, that marketing person never promised them anything of like, hey, you're going to get this or you're going to get that. That's to me where the red flags are, is if the marketing person or the company, whoever it is like making big time promises to you. Hey, pay our, fancy expensive marketing package and we guarantee you're going to get this and you're going to get that, national media exposure, or we're going to get you on a major television show, or we're going to get you a movie deal. Those are the areas especially that are red flags to me that I look out for. It's very difficult when, from a PR perspective to guarantee anything. When I worked in TV news, we had folks all the time pitching that they wanted to have folks on our show or whatever, but I can't guarantee anything. And even if I did book somebody to come on our newscast and be interviewed, breaking news might happen, and then I might have to cancel the interview or whatever. Like, you never know. So I think just in general, just keep an eye out. How much money are you going to spend? What are they saying they can or can't do? But just know that there's no guarantees with PR. And paid ads, it's iffy. Some do have some success for authors, others don't. Sometimes I tell authors, I've seen authors market their book themselves, and they've done better than paying somebody because they know the audience, they know the content, they're passionate about it, they know what platforms they want to be featured on. They're already, reading the blogs that cover topics related to their book or listening to the podcasts or whatever. So they know where their audience is. So it doesn't mean you have to spend money. Does it hurt? No, it necessarily doesn't hurt unless you feel like you wasted that money. But yeah, marketing's tricky because there are no guarantees. And again, like we talked about earlier, you may have an amazing book, but nobody can guarantee that it's going to be a success. I remember a few years back I was at a conference and talked to an agent who had their author on the Oprah show. Now I'm kind of gonna give away my age a little bit because I used to watch the show on TV. And I remember it was like 4:00 in the afternoon or whatever. And I loved it. And this agent said that they had an author on Oprah's show and sold no books. So you can have the best opportunity possible with a massive platform, a massive audience, eyeballs on your author, on the book or whatever, and there's still no guarantee. Other stuff related to marketing, book shows or festivals. I've seen a lot of stuff over the years. It did kind of slow down when the pandemic happened, but like, hey, spend money with us and we'll put your book at the such and such book festival or the such and such show. And I've had authors do that and they were so frustrated and came to me later and like, man, I spent this money to do this. And it was like a bookshelf that was behind like a velvet rope that nobody could even walk over to it. And there was like tons of other books on this bookshelf. So they really weren't like prominently displayed. So it doesn't mean the supplier did anything wrong. It may just be that the author didn't have a full understanding of what they were paying for. So that's important. You've got to understand, what are you paying for? What are they saying they will do? Where will your book be placed? Can you go there if you want to? What kind of attendance will there be at the event, or who's the audience for the event? And are you going to get some kind of proof of performance? If you're paying money to anybody for anything, you want some kind of proof of performance. If I pay, an auto repair shop to fix my brakes, when I get my car back after paying them, my brakes working well is my proof of performance. So silly, that's not a book related example, but I do think it's important. What will they do for you for what money you're going to spend? And will you get some kind of proof of that? Contracts. Lots of questions always come up about contracts. With BookLogix, we over the years have helped a lot of authors that have worked with a supplier previously and just weren't happy and came to us instead, because they didn't know about us in the beginning. It's some of our competitors unfortunately have a much bigger marketing budget than we do, and so folks hear about those guys first, and then they're not happy, and then they come to us later. So we get a lot of questions about contracts because they may have signed a contract with another company and then they don't want to work with them anymore. So big things to look at with contracts is who owns the rights to the content. Do you own the right to the content if you sign a contract with them? Does the company? And what happens to that? Certainly traditional publishing is different than non-traditional publishing. If you work with BookLogix, we're not a traditional publisher. You own all of your content. We don't have you sign over the copyright or anything like that. It's all yours. First right of refusal. This one is one that a lot of authors don't know what this is. If you're a first-time author, you've never even heard of this probably. First right of refusal basically talks about your future works, books that you will write after this first one that you're doing. A lot of contracts have some kind of a clause in there that basically says that you promise to give this company that you're about to sign with the first right of refusal on the next book that you do. You have to give the manuscript to them first, and they have the option to publish it or not publish it before you can pitch it to anybody else. Now, you may be okay with that. Again, that just doesn't mean that's a bad thing, but maybe you're not okay with that. So like we had an author that really didn't like the previous company she was with, and there was a first right of refusal clause, and she was like, I don't want to give them my next manuscript. I don't want to work with them anymore. So she had to figure out, okay, how do I terminate this contract? How do I get out of it? Rights to derivative works or other materials or other formats. Some publishing contracts only cover certain formats, so it might be just for the print book, and maybe it has nothing to do with the ebook, so you may retain the rights to the ebook. Or what if you decide you want to do a workbook to go as a companion with your book? So it's important to know what is in this contract. What can you do, based on the terms of the contract, or what can they do? Are you signing over the right to them for them to make other products based off your book, or for them to do an ebook, even if maybe you weren't thinking you wanted your book as an ebook, like that kind of thing? Roles and responsibilities. So who is supposed to do what? What are you supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? All that good stuff. More and more. So in the good old days, traditional publisher, they do everything. They would roll out the red carpet. They'd take you on a book tour, all that stuff. Now they still do that for some authors, but not everybody. Nowadays, more and more, we're seeing some scenarios where, excuse me, the traditional publisher is not doing everything. They're doing the bulk of the stuff, but maybe when it comes to some of the marketing, like social media or appearances or whatever, they may rely on you as the author to do some of those things. Who owns the book files? So we talked about content a couple minutes ago and knowing who owns the content, but who owns the actual files? So if you have a supplier create things for you, like a cover design or like illustration, or if they do your layout, well, who owns those files? Do they? Do you? That's very important. A lot of designers, the nature of their contracts will be, they will do all the design work for you, but then they give you a print ready PDF at the end. Well, what about the source files? Source files would be like the files they use to make the layout in or do the design in, and go, if they need to go back in and make changes, they don't do it in the PDF, they do it in the source files. But do you own them, or did they? What if down the road you want to make some changes or updates to your book or do a new edition, things like that? Same thing with artwork. If you hire an artist and they're doing drawings or paintings, who owns those actual physical drawings or paintings at the end? Do you? Do they? Who pays for what and when? So what are you responsible for paying for? When is payment due by? Things like that. Do they have payment plans or not? How long is this agreement or relationship or contract going to last for? Keep an eye out for anything that says duration of the copyright. Well, copyright goes like 70 years past an author's death. So if you're signing a contract that's duration of the copyright, you're basically committing to that contract for after you're gone. So then you're basically locking your estate in and whoever's taking over control of your estate to some kind of contract. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Again, doesn't mean these things are bad. They're just things that may not fit what you are looking for and that you should look out for. How does cancellation work? Can you cancel? How do you cancel? At what point are you allowed to cancel? How much money will you get back if you cancel? All that good stuff. Very important because you never know. You may think that this supplier is a great fit for you and then you may start working with them and for some reason you decide that you want to go in a different direction. Or let's just say you start working with some kind of a non-traditional book company and then, all of a sudden, next thing you know, you do get an offer from a traditional publisher. So you're going to want to cancel that other contract if traditional publishing was your goal. So how do you go about doing that? Exclusivity or limitations to working with other providers. So are they limiting you? Are they saying you can't work with anybody else by signing with them? At BookLogix, and again, every company is different. I can only tell you what we do. In this scenario, we don't have any kind of exclusivity. You can work with any other supplier that you want to for your book. You can, use your own marketing person or your own designer or whatever. We're totally flexible. Distribution of royalties. So are you having them sell the book? If you are, how's that going to be handled? Who's doing what? What are they doing? What are you supposed to do? Are you going to get paid royalties and all that good stuff? Who's in charge of marketing? Are they or are you? And what will be done? And again, more and more publishers are kind of relying and leaning more heavily on the author to jump in and do the marketing nowadays. And what's your cost per book? This is a big one. You should not be paying full price for your own book. Every supplier is different. Every contract is different. But at BookLogix, our authors just pay manufacturing costs for the book. We don't say, oh, take the price on the book and take 20% off that price and that's what you pay. We know that you've got to sell some books and make some money. So you pay manufacturing costs and then you can sell the books, keep the money. We do offer selling services, but for copies you need for yourself, you're going to pay manufacturing costs. Check your copyright page. When you work with a supplier, be sure to look at the copyright page of your book if they are working on the book at all. What name is on the copyright statement line? I had a scenario just in the last few months where a client came to us and wanted to print a large quantity of books. And because I have to protect authors, that's part of our mission at BookLogix, and that's something that's really important to me personally, I was like, ooh, okay, well, you're coming to me to print, but you're not the only name on the copyright line. There's another supplier's name on the copyright line. It said author name and so-and-so. I'm not going to give names. That author didn't even realize it. Didn't even realize that the supplier had put their name right up there on the copyright name line next to their name and said, no, I never signed any contract giving this person part of my copyright. This is my book. I wrote it. So they had to go back to that supplier. So certainly keep an eye out for that. There's a company that shut down a few years ago. The owners were actually arrested. They were in the publishing business and they were putting some stuff on the copyright page about certain parts of the book being copyrighted to their company. So they were saying stuff like, I'll just kind of make up some examples, cover copyrighted to company XYZ, or layout copyrighted to company XYZ, or just things like that, like you want to take a look at that to see what is being put on your copyright page. Are there any other lines in the contract about any party other than you holding rights to anything? Or is there any contact information you don't want on the copyright page? I personally do not recommend putting your own personal email address on there or your own personal phone number. Come up with an email address that is for you as an author, but I wouldn't use personal information. So, is there anything on there that you don't want on there? That's something to keep an eye out for. In the scenario I gave a moment ago about the author who the supplier put something in the copyright line, there also was a phone number for that supplier. And the author just didn't want that on there. So, is there anything that you just don't feel right about? Keep an eye on that. Again, if you have questions, please don't be shy. Use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. You can type your question in there. I'm keeping an eye out for those. I'm glad to take your questions either during the session or again at the end. So other things to look for, are they a licensed business? Now, some of this just depends on your personal comfort level. But if you have to take them to court later and you need to track them down, it may be easier if they are a licensed business. And you can look folks up if you're not in the state of Georgia. I'm just giving Georgia because we're here in Georgia, but you can check the Secretary of State business search for your own state. Do they have a business license? There are a lot of freelancers out there that don't. Again, if they don't, it doesn't mean they are a bad supplier. It doesn't mean they will do bad work. They might do amazing work. But is that something that's important to you? We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I certainly recommend checking out the Better Business Bureau as a way to look for reviews on a supplier, good reviews and bad reviews, and any claims or disputes. And BBB offers a process of resolution. So, if you see a claim or a dispute or something negative, like read the whole chain. Did the provider or supplier respond? Did they take care of the situation and resolve it for their client? Did everything in the end turn out great? Sometimes something happens and it's about what the company does to make it right. But you may also want to look at their rating. So BBB assigns like a score. BookLogix, we work real hard. We're really proud of it. We have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, but you may see other suppliers that don't have a ranking that feels right to you. How many years have they been in business? Things like that. That again, you got to trust your gut when you look at this stuff and what feels right and what doesn't feel right. I'm going to pause for a question. We have another great question. Does the author do the copyright filing or does the publisher do it? It really depends. I've seen all different scenarios. A supplier like BookLogix, where things are a la carte, you can use our service of copyright filing. Although I will tell you, we don't offer copyright filing if you don't get editing from us. Because if we don't edit the book to really be familiar with the material, we don't want to get ourselves in an illegal hot water by trying to file copyright when maybe there's something that shouldn't be part of the copyright filing. So, that's something to take a look at. You can certainly work directly with a lawyer to do it, or the Copyright Office itself. You could file it yourself as an author online on copyright.gov. So you don't even have to have anybody help you. If you feel comfortable, you can do it yourself on the Copyright Office's website. You'll just want to be careful. Make sure you're not going to get yourself in any kind of trouble by claiming things you shouldn't or filing for things you shouldn't. I don't necessarily recommend filing copyright right away. I would at least get through all the editing, because if the manuscript changes, it's actually more expensive to file an amendment to your copyright than to file the initial copyright. So you're really better off like making sure that the book is all edited, is all good to go, before you file is my recommendation. But that is totally up to you. I have some authors that just don't feel right and they want to file it in the beginning and they're willing to pay and do an amendment to the copyright later. Keep in mind, some things are not protected under copyright. The title of your book, not covered under copyright. And that's why sometimes in our industry you will see books with the same title. All right, let's see, another question. When we send a manuscript to an editor before publishing, do we need to make them sign a confidentiality agreement? That's really up to you. Like I talked about it in the very beginning, when I see issues in this industry, It's not about somebody stealing your copyright. It has happened, yes, but the bulk of what I see is nothing to do with somebody stealing your copyright and like pirating the work. It's more authors feeling like they didn't get what they paid for, or they got ripped off, or a supplier disappeared on them after they got their money. You certainly can have them sign a confidentiality agreement, you know, but they may already have, if you're signing an agreement to hire them, that wording may already be in there. So it really just depends. You can certainly ask any supplier for a copy of their terms and conditions or their contract before you work with them. And if you're not feeling right about it, you can certainly ask them to sign an NDA. You know, we have no problem with that. We have an NDA that, you know, we can do with authors if they want to do that first before they sign the publishing agreement with us. We're flexible. So yeah, totally up to you. I don't know that it's required. Somebody says, could you be the publishing consultant for my book? We have publishing consultants on our team that work with you when you're a client of BookLogix, but it's not a separate service that we offer independent of you working with us to get our other services. So if you're kind of going through the whole publishing process with BookLogix, you'll work directly with our team. You'll have a publishing consultant. But if you, let's say, were self-publishing and you had your own editor and designer and we don't offer just publishing consultant. Now, there are folks out there that are author coaches. That may be something that's a good fit for you. And that's literally what they do. They just coach authors and help them. Some of them are, though, just more so focused on the writing process and the development of the book. They may not be as involved in other parts of the process. But there's all kinds of suppliers out there. But again, if you work with BookLogix and are going through the full process, just by default, by the nature of how our process works, you'll work directly with our team, advising you and taking you through the process. Okay, I've got a little bit of time left here. So other things to look at when you're selecting a provider, and again, some of these may not be important to you. Some of them maybe are very important to you. Do they have a physical office, or is it all virtual? So if you want to, can you go there? Can you meet with them? Can you sit down and go through designs or go through edits and ask them questions? Or does that really even make a difference to you? It may not. There are plenty of suppliers that you will just work with virtually that are going to do an awesome job, and you may never see them in person. And that's okay. And I think too, like, you know, certainly COVID and Zoom and all that stuff has really changed the way people work. But I have a lot of authors that are, I've even had authors drive from other states because it was that important to them to come and be face to face with somebody. You may want to check the address on Google Maps. What type of facility is it? You know, we a few years back heard about a company that was giving a New York address, but it was basically just a postal box. They did not have an office in New York City. They did not have a physical location where their staff was working out of. They basically had a postal box. Maybe that matters to you, maybe it doesn't. Again, it doesn't mean they're a bad supplier. It's really about you gauging what feels right. What supplier is a good fit for you based on some of this stuff. Personal referrals. You know, can you interact or talk to an author that has used them? I definitely recommend join a writers group. Talk to other writers. Who have they used? Who have they not used? For what reasons? Who did they like or not like? But definitely, you know, work with other writers. They will be an amazing resource for you in a lot of areas, not just to find suppliers. They may have tips for you on marketing, or you guys can offer to read each other's manuscripts and give feedback and be beta readers or whatever. Like, definitely let other writers support you and support them in turn. I think that's really important. There's all kinds of blogs and organizations for writers, writing clubs, writing groups. You know, here in the Atlanta area, we've got the Atlanta Writers Club, the Georgia Writers Association. There's organizations like Writer Beware, so they post information and tips and things to try to help writers. So certainly lots and lots of resources out there. When interacting with a potential provider, this makes me think back to when I was young and my dad took me to look at my first car, and I remember him drilling it in my brain. Don't act desperate. Don't tell them you even like the car. Don't tell them it's your favorite color. None of that. There's lots of ways to get published and lots of providers. What I've seen of the authors that got scammed or felt ripped off, a lot of them were just so hungry for somebody to look at their manuscript or for somebody to publish them that they really didn't do their homework. They didn't do the research. They were just so wrapped up in like, wow, somebody wants to do my book, that they kind of didn't think about, oh, I should protect myself, or where's my money going, or what am I getting for my money? So, you know, again, like I talked about earlier, if somebody is like falling all over you, but they haven't even seen your manuscript yet, you know, think about that. Beware of those high pressure sales tactics. There is no reason that you have to sign up in the next 3 days to get this special or whatever. If it's the type of company that they're offering discounts or specials, they're going to do it again at some point. If it's really that important to you to like save some money or whatever, I wouldn't personal opinion, I would not let somebody force me into signing unless I felt 100% sure about it. So I think that's important. When you're interacting with a potential provider in any area, ask as many questions as you can. I think that's really important. Even if you have to write them down, bring in notes, or sit on the phone with your list of questions. Take time to make your decision. There's no hurry. The publishing process, if done correctly, takes a while anyway. Typically for us, a lot of the projects we work on average like 4 months, 5 months, but I don't even recommend releasing your book right away after that. You need for time to pre-market and build that buzz before the book actually even comes out. And then when the book is out, what we often see is it can take 18 to 24 months of consistent, persistent marketing and pushing and stuff for you to get that book to the point where you really feel great about it and feel like it's doing well. So there's no hurry. Take your time. It's an important decision. You've got to feel good about it. Trust your gut. You heard me say that a lot today. I really strongly believe in that and what feels right to you. All right, time for some more questions. Again, you can use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel to send me any questions that you have. Before we dive into questions, I do want to say this webinar is part of our series of webinars that we offer. We try to do them every Wednesday. We do skip sometimes around the holidays, so we are going to take a little break around 4th of July holiday. We will be posting our schedule for the next few months soon on our website. So you can keep an eye on our website for the latest sessions that we have. All right, so somebody says, this is a follow-up. I have my editor, but need other help. So certainly, yeah, our process is all a la carte. You can do as many or as few services as you'd like with us. So we can certainly assist you. We have a lot of authors that already have their own editor, and then they come to us for the whole rest of the process or just parts of the process. So you can just reach out to us, give us a call, or send us an email, or we have some forms you can fill out on our website. But yeah, you know, we're certainly glad to help authors in any stage of the process. I think it's trickier for us to really help when the book is already done and like already listed for sale and already out there. It's really hard to go backwards. So that's why I think doing all your homework and really putting in the steps to put together a good product up front is really the most important thing. Because once that book's out there, it is really hard to go backwards. And like, it's easy to change it, but if you put out a bad product and then there's negative reviews on Amazon, it's really hard to kind of come back from that. So typically when we're working with authors, the ideal is to work with them in some stage of the process before the book is released in any kind of way. But yeah, we'd love to help. We love working with authors. Our team is all in-house. Literally right here in the building. We actually print our authors' books right here on site too. We are unique in our industry in that we, you know, a lot of publishers don't do their own printing. We do it right here. I can literally run out back and yell, "Stop the press," if I need to. Now, hopefully I never need to, but I could if I needed to, because we print right here in addition to doing editing and design and copyright filing and ebooks and all that stuff is right here on site with our team. So I hope that this session was helpful. I'm not seeing any other questions come in, but don't be shy later. Feel free to reach out to us. You can email, you can call. Our team is happy to help you. And we will see you back soon in another couple weeks for another webinar. If you have any ideas for webinars or topics that you think would be helpful too, feel free to give us a shout. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much and take care. We'll see you again soon.